The recent heavy rainfall in Yuzhong County in Gansu province has triggered severe flooding, as torrents of water rush down the mountainside, causing widespread destruction.
The flood just swept away the workers. Look at how deep the mud is on this main road. It's a mess. All the reeds inside were washed away. When I filmed this, there were a lot of plants here, but now they're all gone. Cars were swept away too. So many cars. Even big pine trees got washed away.
The flood in the South River just went over the levee and into the park. Oh my gosh, look at that. The riverbank over there has totally collapsed. The water came down from above. Look, the fishing village, just like the Yellow River, is now totally submerged. I'm heading out to check on my car. The drainage system at Yuzhong County is garbage. The water pipes are gone here. The exhaust pipe on my SUV is underwater now. The car is done for. It's a waterlogged car, totally ruined. On the evening of August 7, central Gansu faced heavy rainfall, with moderate to heavy showers in Lanzhou, Linxia, and Baiyin. From around 6 p.m., Yuzhong County experienced short but intense rainfall, with the Xīnglóng Mountain areas seeing torrential downpours. On August 8, Yuzhong resident Mr. Chen said, "During the flood, I went out to take photos. The villages around our county were severely affected, and rescue efforts are ongoing. The county itself is less impacted, but Xiaokou, Shaokangying, Shaoguangying, and Maliantan were hit hardest." He continued, "Last night, I felt the building shake and went outside to check. The river was roaring, with mudslides from Xīnglóng Mountain about 3 to 4 kilometers away, carrying debris, rocks, and wood. It was frightening. Most bridges in the area were destroyed. We often have mudslides, but never this severe," Mr. Chen added. Officials reported over 30 people missing, but I suspect the number is higher. We don't know how many are buried. Official reports state that, as of 6:30 a.m. on August 9, the Yuzhong County flood disaster caused 15 deaths, 28 missing persons, and 15 injuries. According to the paper, Yuzhong resident Wang Ling was stunned as he watched houses and cars swept away by the flood. He tried contacting his grandmother in Maliantan village, Mapo Township, but failed, suspecting disrupted communications. He said, "My grandmother has Alzheimer's, and I'm deeply concerned for her safety." Ms. Zhao, also from Yuzhong's Chengguan town, recalled that on the night of August 7th, her 7th-floor apartment shook during the flood, leaving her too scared to leave. She said, "Several nearby villages were badly affected, and some still lack communication. We don't know the full situation." Zhang Kehui, a resident of Maliantown village, told China Youth Daily that on the night of August 7th, the village lost power and loud noises came from the mountains. The next morning, he found that a mudslide had nearly flattened the Xīnglóng community in Maliantan, leaving floods, large rocks, and an unknown number of missing people. Yuzhou resident Mr. Zhu said, "Roads are blocked, and villages above Xīnglóng Mountain have no power or water. One village lost several homes entirely. Maliantown was hit hardest, with many houses washed away." A Xīnglóng survivor recounted escaping in the dark and running uphill, while others clung to trees, calling for help, but were tragically swept away. Besides Xīnglóng, 2 other villages were severely affected. The Xīnglóng Mountain scenic area, about 10 kilometers north of Maliantown, was heavily flooded. The Yulong Bridge, a provincial heritage site built in 1763, was destroyed, and restaurants and hotels were badly damaged. Gao Qiming, who ran a restaurant there for 17 years, said the flood destroyed all first-floor facilities, leaving over a meter of mud and twisting some vehicles. A staff member narrowly escaped by waiting on a windowsill for rescue. At a press conference on August 8, Lanzhou's executive vice mayor, Pan Ze, said the heavy rainfall caused severe infrastructure damage in 5 townships, including Chengguang and Mapo. The floods destroyed 102 kilometers of roads and 5 bridges, blocking access to 14 villages. Power, communication, and water supplies were disrupted, with 7 power lines damaged, 37 villages without electricity, and 114 communication towers offline, affecting over 10,000 people. Damaged flood systems and river embankments impacted 24,000 people's access to drinking water. Floods affected 580 acres of farmland, with over 30,000 people impacted, 2,540 houses damaged. Some observers suggested that, given the Chinese authorities' tendency to underreport disasters, the actual situation may be worse. On the evening of August 7, Gansu and Sichuan faced heavy rainfall simultaneously, with mountain floods in the lowest plateau and flooding in the low-lying Sichuan Basin. CCTV reported heavy rainfall in the western Sichuan Basin, with some areas seeing torrential rain, causing flooding and traffic disruptions. The Central Meteorological Office forecasted heavy rain from the night of August 9 to the morning of August 10. At 5:30 a.m. on August 10, the Chengdu Meteorological Station issued a yellow warning for heavy rain, noting intense rainfall and lightning in the city and surrounding areas. Monitoring data showed some Chengdu stations recorded over 80 millimeters of rain in 6 hours, reaching torrential levels. Early morning thunderstorms woke residents, and heavy rainfall caused flooding in low-lying areas during rush hour, disrupting commutes. Deyang's Weather Bureau reported torrential rain in some areas, with hourly rainfall exceeding 40 millimeters. Flooding occurred in Mianzhou or Shifang townships, with water depths over 30 centimeters in low-lying areas. In Leshan, heavy rain raised the Mianjiang River's water level by 1.2 meters by 8 a.m. on August 10. Riverside walkways were flooded, and authorities set up warning barriers and assigned personnel to monitor. In Meishan's Dongpo district, older neighborhoods faced water backflows, with community workers helping residents move valuables and using pumps for drainage. Media investigations suggest additional unreported issues with the Gansu flood disaster. Gansu, including Yuzhong County, has a recurring history of floods. Media reports of orderly progress seem repetitive, highlighting ongoing issues with post-disaster reconstruction and inadequate infrastructure resilience. On June 29, flooding hit the Upper Yellow River, affecting Lanzhou and Linxia in Gansu province. After 6 months of drought, the region's rare rainfall turned into a devastating flood. Flash floods in parts of Linxia swept away vehicles. At around 6 p.m. on June 23rd, a flash flood struck Xīnglóng Valley, Xīnglóng Village, Yongxing Township, Yuzhong County, Gansu, sweeping away several workers at a solar power project. Witnesses reported that after the flood hit, some escaped by jumping from vehicles, while others were carried away. One vehicle attempting to drive against the flood was also swept away. At least 5 people remain missing. Yuzhong County lies between lowest plateau and the Xīnglóng Mountains, with dense valleys and rugged terrain that cause rainstorms to strike quickly and floodwaters to surge even faster. The area has a history of frequent mountain floods and mudslides. In July 2020, heavy rainfall triggered mountain floods in Yuzhong's Mapo and Heping townships, damaging roads and bridges. Repairs were slowed by limited funding and seasonal constraints, with some temporary fixes washed away the next year. In August 2018, heavy rain flooded parts of Yuzhong, severely damaging roads, bridges, and power lines. Official reports claimed full repair efforts and orderly progress, but many repairs were destroyed in the following rainy season. The core issue is that so-called repairs prioritize temporary restoration of roads and power over structural improvements tailored to flood patterns and geological conditions. A deeper issue is the short-term political incentives in local governance. Performance evaluations focus on immediate stability rather than long-term risk reduction. Investments in flood prevention, ecological restoration, and infrastructure resilience, which yield slow results and little political gain, are often sidelined. Without shifting this focus on short-term evaluations over systemic investments, Yuzhong's current crisis could become tomorrow's reality for other counties. So the Sichuan Basin has a long history of heavy rainfall. In 2018, flooding in Chengdu paralyzed traffic and exposed the outdated drainage system. Observers note that these cases share a pattern. The government emphasizes post-disaster nationwide rescue efforts and unity, but rarely invests in prevention. Reports highlight that, in recurring disasters, the Chinese government acts as both rescuer and contributor to risk. These disasters reflect broader systemic issues, starting with a skewed economic development model. China's rapid urbanization prioritizes GDP growth over public resilience. While high-speed rail networks shine, drainage systems and hillside protections lag. As of 2020, China's urban drainage coverage was below 80%. with many systems designed for once-a-year rainfall compared to once-in-a-decade standards in developed nations. With near-total land control, the Chinese government could prevent construction in high-risk floodplains and mudslide zones. Instead, funds flow to GDP-boosting projects like industrial parks and real estate, while drainage systems, river management, and flood warning systems, costly and less visible, are often underfunded. Post-disaster central funding focuses on restoring the status quo rather than improving standards, perpetuating a repair, flood, repair cycle in places like Yuzhong and Chengdu. Experts view Yuzhong's damaged roads and bridges as evidence of prioritizing vanity projects over essential infrastructure. This risk-exacerbating approach turns a natural rain event into a large-scale social disaster. Another issue is a lack of transparency in rescue efforts. In China's system, information is a political tool, and disaster data is often delayed or vague to prioritize stability. Even meteorological warnings may be withheld to avoid panic. Post-disaster death and missing person counts are frequently revised, obscuring the true extent of losses from the public and outsiders. For instance, in Gansu, over 10,000 people lost communication and 28 were missing. Sichuan's warnings, though issued, lack enforcement. In 2021, Henan's underreported death toll sparked public outrage. Official reports downplay impacts, stating over 30,000 affected, masking countless broken families. Ironically, post-disaster propaganda pushes heroic narratives like nationwide aid for Henan, while ignoring failed warnings and underlying corruption. China's top-down political system evaluates local governments on economic growth, investment, stability, and emergency response performance. Long-term, low-visibility disaster prevention offers little career advancement. In contrast, dramatic rescue scenes and leaders on the front lines boost political profiles, driving focus towards post-disaster mobilization rather than proactive risk management. After disasters, the government pledges strict accountability, but typically only low-level officials face consequences, while senior leaders responsible for resource allocation and policy escape significant punishment. After Zhengzhou's July 20th floods, 89 officials were disciplined, yet similar disasters struck Gansu and Sichuan 4 years later, showing that accountability fails to reform incentives or build a sustainable disaster prevention culture. A deeper failure lies in addressing climate change. As a major carbon emitter, China pledges dual carbon goals, but reliance on fossil fuels drives frequent extreme weather. Droughts and heavy rains in the northwest and stronger southwest monsoons tied to global warming. Yet responses focus on post-disaster rebuilding, not proactive ecological restoration. International reports note that a 30% rise in China's flood frequency since 2000, amplified by environmental degradation. Socially, disasters widen inequity. Rural Gansu villages and urban low-income residents suffer most. Villagers clinging to trees for survival contrast starkly with official prosperity narratives. Ironically, the regime's People First slogan rings hollow as citizens are left to fend for themselves in floods. In summary, the Chinese government's responsibility extends beyond slow and flawed emergency responses. Its institutional design and fiscal priorities hinder pre-disaster investment and long-term risk management, perpetuating a cycle of disasters in Yuzhong, Chengdu, Zhengzhou, and beyond.